Food contact materials are among the most effective weapons of depopulation in the arsenal of our governments and the military-industrial complex. Packaging enables the depopulation lobby to adulterate food and drinks after they are placed in the containers in which they will be sold to consumers, thus passing all food safety tests prior to packaging. But by the time the food and drinks reach the consumers, they are fully adulterated with depopulation poisons, which leach from the packaging containers into the food or drinks contained therein. Food contact materials therefore allow the depopulationists to bypass all safeguards put in place to ensure our food safety. To date, scientists have identified 175 chemicals with hazardous properties that are used in food contact materials in the US and the EU, and indeed throughout the world. These chemicals might act at very low doses, often without a measurable toxicological threshold, and their toxicity can be increased in the presence of other chemicals with the same mode of action. In other words, they are unsafe and damaging to human health in any quantity, however small, and together they have a cocktail effect that is unpredictable. Out of these 175 depopulation poisons that leach from food contact materials, 14 are the most common and are found across the world. They are ethylene oxide, bisphenol A or BPA, dibutyl phthalate or DBP, benzyl butyl phthalate or BBP, propylparaben, 4-butylphenol, styrene, epichlorohydrin, resorcinol, DEHP or bis-artilhexyl phthalate, benzophenone, oxybenzone, boric acid, and tert-butyl hydroxyanisole or BHA. To ensure that the depopulation program continues unabated, our genocidal governments are phasing out some depopulation poisons from consumer items to pretend that they are doing something, but not from food contact materials. They need us to ingest as many of these depopulation poisons for as long as possible, so the following poisons are being phased out from consumer items, but are being left in food contact materials because they are carcinogenic, mutagenic, and toxic to reproduction, and thus ideal depopulation weapons. They are disobutyl phthalate or DIBP, dibutyl phthalate or DBP, benzyl butyl phthalate or BBP, 4-methylene dianiline or MDA, tris-chloroethyl phosphate or TCEP, and bis-ethylhexyl phthalate or DEHP. As you will remember from our previous lessons, our governments need to reduce the population. The US and the EU, for instance, both need to reduce their populations by half to reach sustainability. And to accomplish this, they need to continue to poison us into extinction through food and drinks. Let's start with plastic bottles. To close the loophole created by the modern habit of drinking bottled rather than tap water, the depopulation lobby has replaced glass with plastic bottling starting in 1980 and has used a specific fertility-depressing chemical called bisphenol A, or BPA for short, to manufacture two kinds of plastics, polycarbonates and epoxy resins. BPA is ingested when it leaches into food and beverages for human consumption. Since nearly every plastic bottle on the planet is now made of BPA-based polycarbonates, and almost every metal and aluminum can in the world is lined with epoxy resins containing BPA, people are chronically exposed. The lining of metal cans with BPA is aimed at both the urban and rural poor, who are more likely to eat canned soups, vegetables, and fruit, and will thus receive more than their share of fertility-depressing agents, as they will ingest it from multiple sources. In 2015, an estimated 4 million tons of BPA chemical were produced for manufacturing polycarbonate plastic, making it one of the highest volume of chemicals produced worldwide. In 2016, 480 billion plastic drinking bottles were sold worldwide. BPA is a known xenoestrogen, thus mimics the hormone estrogen, the primary female sex hormone, and wreaks havoc with human health by destroying the endocrine system. More than this, it interrupts the network that regulates the signals which control reproductive development, which is why a sixth of the population of the developed world, and increasingly of the developing world too, has been rendered sexually confused and now belongs to the LGBT category, and is therefore shut out of reproduction, as the depopulationists have intended, and why males are becoming effeminate and children have serious developmental disorders. BPA is also a carcinogen and is largely responsible for the cancer epidemic that now kills 10 million people annually, a sixth of all deaths in the world, and why 2 million women are diagnosed with breast cancer every year, of which a fifth die. Yet BPA plastic bottles are used for more than 90% of global bottling of drinks, and governments refuse to ban their use. The U.S. Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, has ended its authorization of the use of BPA in baby bottles and infant formula packaging based on market abandonment, not safety. The European Union and Canada have banned BPA use in baby bottles, but are allowing the use of other types of plastic that are just as damaging. The BPA-free label is seen increasingly more often, but it means absolutely nothing for our health, because the alternatives used, namely BPS and BPF, are just as damaging. The reality is that all plastics leach depopulation poisons, and therefore no plastic of any kind must ever come in contact with our food or drinks. The damaging effects of BPA on human health are legion. Numerous studies have demonstrated that it causes obesity, has effects on thyroid function. Exposure to BPA in the uterus and during childhood is associated with poor behavioral outcomes in humans and higher levels of anxiety, depression, hyperactivity, attention deficit, heightened sensitivity to drugs, and aggression in children. Increases cancer risk, especially for breast cancer, testicular cancer, neuroblastoma, and leukemia. Suppresses DNA methylation, causing epigenetic changes that are heritable, therefore degrading the genetic and intellectual stock of the species. Leads to lower sperm count, decline in testicular testosterone, and decreased male sexual function. Leads to miscarriage. Leads to permanent changes in the genital tract and the breast tissue that predisposes cells to hormones and carcinogens. Perinatal exposure to BPA in drinking water is linked to asthma and lower lung capacity. It causes long-term adverse reproductive and carcinogenic effects, increases prostate weight by 30%, leads to lower body weight in infants, and an increase in the distance between the anus and the genitals in both genders, and to early puberty, leads to decreased maternal behaviors, reverses the normal sex differences in brain structure and behavior. In other words, it causes sexual confusion, and disrupts ovarian development. The poisons that leach from plastic bottles leach in greater quantities when they are cleaned with harsh detergents or when they contain acidic or high temperature liquids. BPA is now found in the urine of 95% of all adults and 93% of children. yet a majority of soft drinks tested have been found to have measurable levels of bisphenol A. More alarmingly, there are now higher concentrations of BPA in young children than in adults, which is due to the fact that BPA is eliminated from the body through a detoxification process in the liver that is not fully developed in children, so they have a decreased ability to clear BPA from their systems. That is why human health continues to deteriorate, and every new generation is sicker and feebler than the previous one. Plastics are largely responsible for this state. It destroys human health and destroys the environment because it does not decompose, as it is non-biodegradable. The oceans now contain more plastic than there is fish. 8 million tons of plastic are dumped into the oceans every year. There are now 5.3 trillion plastic debris in the ocean and is killing an estimated 1 million marine creatures every year. The world is drowning in plastic trash. It is polluting our beaches, our rivers, our lakes, our drinking water, and our oceans. Plastic is for schmucks. Please stop using it. If you don't care for your health and life, care at least for your children's lives and health, because the damage you incur from ingesting plastic pollutants degrades your DNA and is inherited by your children. Every time you drink from a plastic bottle or eat from a plastic container, you damage your own DNA and pass on that damage to your children. You are responsible. Let us now look at metal cans. More than 300 billion beverage cans are produced globally each year. 90% of the beverage cans are made of aluminum and the remaining 10% of steel. 800,000 metric tons of various coatings are applied to these cans in any given year, of which BPA-based epoxy resins have the highest market share of more than 90%. Having exposed BPA-based epoxy resins as depopulation poisons, can manufacturers and food companies have started to replace them with acrylic and polyester coatings, as well as polyolefin and non-BPA epoxy coatings. In the 1950s, epoxy resins were introduced as coatings for aluminum and steel cans. Their stability, protective function, and technical properties made them the most commonly used coating material. Most epoxy coatings are synthesized from bisphenol A and from bisphenol A diglycidyl ether, BAG for short. Many different blends of epoxy coatings were developed, with epoxy phenolic coatings being the most important subgroup. Other blended resins are epoxy amines, acrylates, and anhydrides. All of these coatings migrate or leach into the liquids they envelop, and they leach a number of substances: oligomers, catalysts, reaction accelerators, epoxidized edible oils, amino resins, acrylic resins, various esters, waxes, lubricants, and metals. Studies show levels of BPA and BAG in the urine of more than 90% of the population at levels that exceed even what regulatory agencies consider safe. Honest science and experience, however, show us that there is no such thing as safe levels of these poisons, and that in fact they are more damaging at lower concentrations. Can coatings generally release complex chemical mixtures into the food and drinks, and only a few of these migrating substances, such as BPA and BAG, have been thoroughly tested. Many migrating substances are completely unknown because they are reaction byproducts and degradation products. Cytotoxic effects of migrates from epoxy and polyester-based coatings were tested using a series of assays. The results of one of these assays showed that only about 0.5% of the cytotoxic effects measured could be traced back to the amount of BPA and BAG. In other words, 99.5% of the poisons we ingest from the liquids we drink from metal cans are of an unknown origin. If that is not a reason to be alarmed, consider that in some cases, consuming the content of a single can of food could exceed the FDA cumulative exposure daily intake limit. A 2011 experiment by researchers at the Harvard School of Public Health revealed that when participants ate canned soup for a week, they experienced more than 1,000% increase in their urinary concentrations of BPA. Responsible food producers like Eden Foods, who care about the health of their customers, have replaced BPA-lined metal cans with cans lined with oleoresinous sea enamel, which is a mixture of oil and resin extracted from plants such as pine and balsam. Others are using polyester and acrylic coatings that are less damaging than BPA coatings, but still not safe. And for acidic foods like canned tomatoes, the only safe alternative is glass jars. Eden Foods explains. We asked our supplier of cans, Bold Corporation, the logical question: what did you use before this BPA-containing can lining? They told us about vegetable resin enamel that was previously used. Naturally, we asked if we could get cans using this enamel lining, and what the cost might be to do so. Eventually the answer was yes, but at a significantly higher cost. We agreed to pay a 14% higher price for BPA-free line cans, and bisphenol A-free cans were made for Eden early in 1999. We knew that this was not a numbers issue, but a moral and ethical one. The sea enamel may contain 1 to 45% by weight, and preferably from 1 to 25% by weight of pure zinc oxide, and is a stable, non-reactive product which can be held in storage containers for periods of up to 1 year without excessive viscosity increases and with virtually no settling of the zinc oxide. If the zinc oxide is not present in the can coating, sulfide compounds in the foods will react with the ferrous container and produce a black, insoluble iron sulfide. While iron sulfide is not particularly toxic or harmful, it does affect the taste and the color of the food inside the container, and especially imparts a very unappetizing appearance to the food. The zinc sulfides, which are formed by the preferential reaction of sulfur compounds with zinc oxide, are colorless and are not detrimental to the container or product in either appearance or taste. The Breast Cancer Fund has conducted a study on how to reduce BPA contamination of people by 60% in just 3 days. They advise the following measures. 1. Carry your own glass, steel, or ceramic water bottle filled with filtered or mineral water, and never drink from plastic bottles or eat from plastic containers. 2. Switch to stainless steel and glass food storage and beverage containers. 3. Move foods to ceramic or glass food containers for microwaving. 4. Use a French press for coffee, because home coffee makers have polycarbonate-based water tanks and phthalate-based tubing. 5. Eat out less, especially at restaurants that do not use fresh ingredients. 6. Limit consuming food out of metal cans unless they are BPA-free and have an inner lining made of oleoresinous sea enamel. 7. Choose fresh fruit and vegetables. 8. Avoid handling carbonless receipts. As consumers avoid buying food in metal cans lined with BPA, producers will respond by using glass jars for acidic foods and sea enamel coated metal cans for everything else. Let us now look at Tetra Paks. Tetra Pak is a multinational food packaging and processing sub-company of Tetra Laval that invented the Tetra Pak, a tetrahedron-shaped plastic-coated paper carton from which the company name was derived. It also invented the aseptic packaging technology, a process by which a sterile or aseptic product is packaged in a sterile container in a way that maintains sterility. Sterility is achieved with a flash heating process that heats the food or drink at temperatures between 195 and 295 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 91 degrees to 146 degrees Celsius. Aseptic food preservation methods allow processed food and drinks to keep for long periods of time without preservatives, so long as they are not opened. The aseptic packages made by Tetra Pak are typically a mix of 70% paper, 25% polyethylene, and 6% aluminum, with a tight polyethylene inside layer, which leaches, of course, a BPA. Together, these materials form a tight seal against microbial organisms, contaminants, and degradation, eliminating the need for refrigeration. Tetra Pak aseptic cardboard-based cartons are used for milk, juice boxes, coconut water, wine, and many other drinks. Studies have found that water packaged in Tetra Pak leaches even more BPA than plastic bottles. This is undoubtedly due to the fact that the company uses very high temperatures during the packaging process, and bisphenol migrates faster from the inner lining of the packaging material, which is a polyethylene plastic film, into the liquid at higher temperatures. UV light and hydrogen peroxide are also used during the packaging process, and they too accelerate the release of BPA. Tetra Pak is a world leader in the packaging of milk, which it started in the 1960s in Europe and in the 1980s in the US. Tetra Pak uses a three-step sterilization process for milk containers, whereby first the package is preheated, then treated with evaporated hydrogen peroxide, and finally ventilated with sterile air flow to remove gas residues. Sometimes ultraviolet light is also used. Typically, heat and a solution of 35% hydrogen peroxide are used to sterilize containers feeding into aseptic fillers. With UV, peroxide concentrations can be scaled back to 5%. Both methods leave hydrogen peroxide residues into the milk or liquid packaged, and hydrogen peroxide is toxic to cells. Hydrogen peroxide has been classified as a known animal carcinogen with unknown relevance on humans. Aware of this problem, the company has started to use electron beam technology to replace hydrogen peroxide sterilization of its packaging material. It is the first company to use electron beams, or e-beams, to replace hydrogen peroxide in its carton filling machines. The technology works by focusing a controlled beam of electrons onto the surface of packaging material as it runs through the filling machine, killing any bacteria or microorganism. But for the time being, the vast majority of Tetra Paks used for milk are still sterilized with hydrogen peroxide. The sterilization, filling, and sealing section is a completely sterile environment and has an automated cleaning and sterilization function. Ultra-high temperature processing, or UHT for short, also called ultra-heat treatment or ultra-pasteurization, is used to sterilize the milk, heating it above 135 degrees Celsius or 275 degrees Fahrenheit, the temperature required to kill spores in milk, for 1 to 2 seconds. This process is also used to sterilize fruit juice, cream, soy milk, yogurt, wine, soups, honey, and stews. A UHT is accomplished with steam injection, a technology that injects steam directly into the product for instant sterilization, then removes the steam under vacuum in a flash cooler. This common type of UHT processing degrades the nutritional quality of milk, which averages the following losses: 32.5% vitamin C, 17.9% vitamin B12, 12.5% folic acid, 3.4% vitamin B6, and 2.6% vitamin B2. It also has lower levels of beta-lactoglobulin, a desirable protein. Storage at room temperature for 20 weeks resulted in a 100% loss of vitamin B12, 96% loss of vitamin B6, 85% loss of vitamin C, 32% loss of folic acid, and a negligible change for vitamin B2. Some UHT milk contains just 10% of the folic acid contained in pasteurized milk. People living in countries that consume a lot of UHT milk have to watch most. The countries with high percentage of UHT milk consumption are: first, Belgium at 96.7%. 2. Spain at 95.7%. 3. France at 95.5%. 4. Portugal at 92.9%. 5. Brazil at 88.1%. 6. Croatia at 73%. 7. The Czech Republic at 71.4%. 8. Germany at 66.1%. 9. Switzerland at 62.8%. 10. Turkey at 53.1%. 11. Italy at 49.8%. 12. Poland at 48.6%. 13. Slovakia at 35.5%. 14. Hungary at 35.1%. 15. Austria at 20.3%. And 16. Netherlands at 20.2%. Denmark consumes no UHT milk whatsoever. Greece just 0.9%. Finland 2.4%. Norway 5.3%. Sweden 5.5%. And Sweden is the country that packages most of the world's milk with the Tetra Pak technology. I guess they know better than to use it. Singapore at 7.2%. The UK at 8.4%. And Ireland at 10.9%. Tetra Pak drinks and foods, therefore, are not only contaminated with BPA, which is a depopulation poison, but also with hydrogen peroxide, and denatures food and drinks by stripping them of nutrients. There is only one packaging material for food and liquids that is 100% safe: glass, which is why you should buy everything in glass if you want to avoid ingesting depopulation poisons that migrate from food contact materials. Glass has been used for hundreds of years and is a miracle material with no adverse effects on human health whatsoever, unless, of course, you fly through a window. Glass is cheap and safe and much easier and cheaper to recycle than plastic. Moreover, the know-how exists to make it flexible, scratch-free, and nearly unbreakable. Corning Incorporated, an American company, has developed such glass decades ago and is being used for fiber optic cables, mobile phones, LEDs, windshields, windows, and many other industrial uses. Glass was replaced with plastic as a bottling material starting in the late 1970s because the depopulation lobby needed to poison people who refused to drink tap water adulterated with fluoride, the cheapest and oldest depopulation poison used by our genocidal governments, and who began drinking bottled mineral and spring water to protect themselves. Also because civil society forced governments in Europe through the courts to make tap water fluoridation illegal, and European governments needed an alternative way to poison the well. To close this loophole, the depopulation lobby invented BPA plastic bottles and started lining all packaging containers with BPA. It is time we force industry and our genocidal governments to once again bottle all drinks and viscous foods in glass, as mankind has done for hundreds of years. Buy nothing wrapped in plastic and store nothing wrapped in plastic. Use wax-lined parchment paper or glass containers. Turn your home into a plastic-free zone and replace all plastic with glass containers and all plastic wrap with waxed paper. Your life depends on it. And remember that plastic is for schmucks.